The Ukrainian war against the Russian Federation is at a standstill. There is no compromise that both sides are willing to make. Every day, people from both the Ukrainian and Russian sides die on the battlefield. But there is one difference. Ukrainian citizens are giving their lives for freedom and independence, defending their land, while Russian troops are dying on the orders of dictator Putin, going to foreign lands to kill ordinary people, destroy everything around them, and glorify the Kremlin dictator, who decided to realize his imperial ambitions with the help of millions of human lives. Moreover, the value of human life in Russia is depreciating every year. People who are already disabled and seemingly should not be fighting are sent to the front. For example, the wife of a Russian soldier complains that her husband is being sent to war even after he lost 2 legs, and now uses prostheses to get around. Russian President Vladimir Putin often says in his propaganda speeches that he is ready to negotiate with Ukraine, but his conditions are a fiction, a postponement, and freezing of the war in order to restore his military reserves and attack Ukraine again with renewed vigor to destroy it. Putin's conditions are as follows. First, the annexation of all the territories occupied by Russia, including Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, which are not occupied and are controlled by Ukrainian troops, must be recorded in international treaties as Russian territories. Another condition is that all Western sanctions against Russia must be lifted. According to Putin, for a peaceful settlement, Russia needs Ukraine's neutral, non-aligned, non-nuclear status, its demilitarization and denazification, and the impossibility of joining NATO. According to Putin, the essence of the Russian proposal is allegedly not a temporary truce, and is not about freezing the conflict, but about its final end. Although if Ukraine accepted these conditions, it is possible to say that it is preparing a funeral pit for itself, and I will prove to you why. In 2014, when Russian troops appeared in the Ukrainian Crimea, neither Putin nor the Kremlin authorities recognized that their troops were there. And a month later, on March 11th, a referendum was held there on the creation of an autonomous Republic of Crimea and its accession to the Russian Federation. The same story happened with Ukrainian Donetsk and Luhansk. The Kremlin authorities began to promote the narrative of a civil war in Ukraine. At the same time, Russian mercenaries began to appear on the streets called separatists. They were dressed as ordinary people, but they were pursuing pro-Russian policies, rallying in favor of Russia and creating chaos in the cities. Polls showed that only a quarter of the region's population wanted to unite with Russia, and more than half were in favor of remaining in Ukraine. On April 27th, the separatists proclaimed the so-called Luhansk People's Republic, and on April 29th, they seized the Luhansk regional and city administrations, the regional television station, and the prosecutor's office. Since early March, separatists have seized the Donetsk regional administration several times, which was later liberated by Ukrainian forces. It was finally seized on April 6th. The next day, the separatists proclaimed the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, and on April 16th seized the city hall. Armed Russian supporters attacked numerous pro-Ukrainian rallies. On April 28th, the last patriotic rally took place in Donetsk. Its participants were attacked by people in camouflage with bats, while police watched from the sidelines. Officials from the Party of Regions and the Communist Party of Ukraine actively assisted pro-Russian organizations. On April 12th at 9 a.m., 2 buses with several dozen armed Russian militants drove up to the Interior Ministry building in Sloviansk and began shooting in the air. A few hours later, they seized firearms from the local police station. After capturing the police station personnel, the Russians built barricades and stormed the local security service of Ukraine building. 2 days later, the terrorists controlled the exits from the city. On April 13, 2014, the National Security Council of Ukraine announced the start of the Antiterrorist Operation. From the very beginning, Ukrainian troops were confronted by Russian special services, professional military, and local separatists with Russian weapons. Many of them had experience in the wars in Afghanistan and Chechnya. Some of the Ukrainian soldiers had to learn in real combat. About 300 soldiers of the Alpha and Jaguar Special Forces, the 80th Brigade, and other units of the National Guard were sent to liberate Sloviansk. On April 13th, the first military battle took place in Donbas. On the same day, Russians killed the first Ukrainian soldier, Captain Gennady Belichenko, of the Security Service of Ukraine. Also in April, terrorists occupied Kramatorsk and Druzhivka. Horlivka was captured on the second attempt and was led by a Russian officer. The scenario was similar: mass protests, Russian flags, and the seizure of power structures. The Russians also occupied a strategically important facility, the Kramatorsk airfield, which was later recaptured by Ukrainian troops. Under the direction of the Russian military, local criminals organized the importation of people from Russia to block the work of the Ukrainian military in Kramatorsk. Despite numerous pro-Ukrainian rallies in Donbas, the pro-Russian population forced active Ukrainians out of the eastern regions. In May 2014, fighting was already taking place in Mariupol, Zlotneny, Volnovakha, and Rubizne. During all these attempts to seize Ukraine, Russia did not recognize that its militants were present there. But in the end, it turned out that it was the Kremlin's troops who created all this chaos. Putin has been insidiously trying to seize the territory of Ukraine, and this time will not be an exemption. His word should not be believed. Now that Russia's power has significantly diminished, Putin needs a pause to rebuild his military reserves and retrain his army to start a new war with renewed vigor. In addition, a new alliance with North Korea will make him much stronger. It also became known about the plan to end the war from the newly elected U.S. President Donald Trump. Donald Trump's peace plan to end the war in Ukraine may include a demand that Ukraine refuse to join NATO for 20 years, as well as freezing the front line without returning the territories. This is stated in an article by the Wall Street Journal. According to the newspaper, the plan provides for the freezing of the front line and the creation of an 800-mile, almost 1,300-kilometer demilitarized zone. It is not yet clear who will control this territory, but the U.S. military will not be involved in a peacekeeping mission. We can provide training and other support, but armed defense will be the responsibility of Europe. We are not sending American men and women to keep the peace in Ukraine, and we will not pay for it. Let the Polish, Germans, British, and French do it, said a member of Trump's team. At the same time, the United States intends to provide Ukraine with weapons to deter future Russian attacks. The plan also calls for Russia to leave about 20% of the territory of Ukraine that the aggressor country has already seized. In addition, Trump was presented with another plan. Keith Kellogg and Fred Flitz, who previously worked in the White House during Trump's first term, proposed to stop supplying weapons to Kiev until Ukraine agrees to peace talks with Russia. Ukraine can still try to regain the lost territories, but it will have to do so through diplomatic negotiations, the article said. The Wall Street Journal notes that it is unclear which of these strategies Trump will use, in whole or in part. But any attempt to start peace talks faces many obstacles. In particular, Ukraine and Russia have very different goals for the war. The Kremlin claims that this is necessary to achieve the goals of the special operation, while Ukraine perceives any agreement with Russia as a surrender. Stiff resistance is also likely from some NATO allies, who see Russia's war as a direct threat to their own countries. However, Ukrainian President Zelensky assures that Donald Trump is committed to helping Ukraine and that he can force Putin to the negotiating table and agree to end the war on fair terms. In addition, if Ukraine agrees to give up its territories to Russia in exchange for peace, it will mean only one thing: democracy is powerless against totalitarianism, and brute force wins over the values of free countries. Russia's victory over Ukraine will unleash the hands of other dictatorial countries and set a dangerous precedent for international relations. The world will see that aggression and occupation can go unpunished if they are persistent enough. Other authoritarian regimes inspired by this example may take similar steps, threatening the security of their neighbors and violating international law. In addition, it would be a blow to Ukraine's allies who have supported its struggle for independence and territorial integrity. It could undermine the credibility of the NATO international organization and call into question its ability to provide global security. Ultimately, it would weaken the world order based on law and create chaos where the strong dictate terms to the weak. Putin's negotiation plan is a trap for Ukraine. Putin does not want peace. He wants to realize his ambitions to create his own empire, and he does not care about human lives or anything else. Thank you, friends. Subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with the latest developments. This video was prepared by Hustler. See you soon.